Ulster beat a weakened La Rochelle to book their spot in the semi-final. My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. Decent performance from Ulster in this one. Yes, it was against a weakened La Rochelle side, them keeping a lot of their stars at home, but you can only beat what is put up against you. And we start off with La Rochelle attacking the 22 right off the kickoff, but they knock on. Then Ulster win a penalty from the resulting scrum. Ulster scrum early on was very good. La Rochelle, when they made changes in the second half, definitely were the better of the two, though. Ulster then win another penalty, which they kick to just outside the 22 to go off the top of the line out. It's claimed at tail, actually. They go for like a dummy maul, and La Rochelle by it. Stewart breaks off, and then Zach Ward just comes on a brilliant line, fed the ball, he breaks through, steps to cover, and goes over to score. It's converted for 7 points to 0. La Rochelle then offside, and Doak makes it 10 points to 0. La Rochelle, they work into 22, but Hume gets over the ball and turns it over for Ulster. Some really good work at the breakdown from Ulster today. Tom O'Toole then gets pinged for not rolling, and Jerd makes it 10 points to 3. Jerd then, he gets caught behind his own try line by Hume. 5 metre scrum to Ulster. Augustus goes off the back. He gets close. Then Timney and McCann both have a go. Both stop just short before Tom O'Toole gets over. That's converted for 17 points to 3. We then have a Timo check for a clear out by Zach Ward. He takes Bosmorin above the horizontal, and it's adjudged to be a yellow card for him. La Rochelle then have a scrum in the shadow of the post. They look to spread it right, but Ihia West knocks on with the slippery wall. It was difficult conditions for both teams, especially kicking, but certainly handling as well. Werner Koch then puts in a huge hit on a kick chase, and La Rochelle have to seal off to try and keep the ball. Ulster kick to the corner from the penalty. They go to their maul, and La Rochelle collapse it. Ulster then tap the penalty. The few pick and goes before Izuchuku gets over to score, converted for 24 points to 3. Clock then in the red, and Ulster La Rochelle are pounding away at the Ulster line, and it is Kankorea finally gets the ball down on the line, converted for 24 points to 10 at half time. Maybe a bit of a lifeline for La Rochelle, you're thinking there at the break. In the second half then, Stockdale kicks a brilliant 50-22 and also have a chance to attack. They go to the maul, brought down illegally, they play advantage. Augustus goes close. They then go to Murphy, who cross kicks to Zach Ward, and he gets over in the corner. Conversion is missed, 29 points to 10. La Rochelle then worked the ball into 22, and Latu spots Ulster not really paying attention on the pillar guard, and he picks and goes over to score, converted for 29 points to 17. Jacob Stockdale then does really well to claim his own up and under. It's given out then to Zach Ward, who makes ground on the left and then finds his brother Bryn, who goes in to score. Conversion hits the post, 34 points to 17. La Rochelle then attacking after a Stockdale miss kick, giving them the ball, and their big units off the bench carrying hard into contact, making ground, but Ulster managed to hold them up and turn it over. La Rochelle then come back. They're in the 22 again. Doak offside. They have to tap the penalty for 5 minutes out. Latu gets them close, recycled to another pod, but a combination of Stewart and Sheridan managed to hold them up over the line. Really good last-ditch defence there by Ulster. Ulster then kick a penalty to 10 metres out, but the line out malfunctions and La Rochelle are able to clear. Ulster then get another penalty. They kick this one right into the corner. They go to the maul. It fractures, but McCormack forces his way over to score, converted for 41 points to 17. And then La Rochelle Again, Ulster line under siege at the death. Sclavi forces a way over. It's converted from 41 points to 24, and that was the full-time score. So we'll have a look at the stats, and then we will come back and talk about each of the teams. So let me pull the stats up here on the official website. There we go. Okay, so 6 tries to 3. And yeah, Ulster looking comfortable without really running away with it. Like in the second half, it was kind of status quo for a long time before Ulster got their last try, and then La Rochelle got one right at the death as well. But yeah, once Ulster kind of got that lead, they never looked like giving it up, and La Rochelle never looked like wresting the momentum away from them completely, especially in that second half. Onto meters made then, 344 to 263. That's from 104 carries to 93. So Ulster over 3 meters per carry, and La Rochelle just under 3 meters per carry. Clean breaks then 9 to 5. That's from 25 and 15 defenders beaten. So both were around about 1 and 3 in terms of conversion rate. Offloads then 7 to 4. Passes 87 to 79. 47% possession for Ulster to 53, and 41% territory to 58. So La Rochelle with the majority of the ball and most of it in the Ulster half, but it was Ulster who, manufactured the better chances and took those chances as well. Tackles made then 125 to 112. Tackle success 84% for Ulster is really good. We always talk about, in your European level, 80% is kind of your pass mark, and anything above that, you're doing really well. La Rochelle then at 71%. Not good enough for this level. It was a bit of a scratch team from them, though, so you have to kind of give them a bit of a break on that, I guess. Turnovers won then 4 to 2 in favour of Ulster. On to set piece then, lineouts. Ulster 9 successful lineouts, but down at 64%, and a lot of that had to do with the conditions. Like the ball was moving so much in the air, and then La Rochelle 5 lineouts from them at 83%. So they obviously went 5 from 6, but I think they kind of benefited from the fact that they only had 6 lineouts in the game. No lineout steals. Scrums won then 9 to 8 in favour of Ulster, and team scrumming at 90% to 89%. As I said, Ulster looked the better scrum early on. La Rochelle turned it around towards the end. On to kicking then, kicks from hand 24 to 20, kick meters. So we have 658 to 612. So both teams kicking round about 30 meters per kick. Ulster a little less, and you kind of can see that as well, because they were the ones going for more of the contestable kicks. Retained kicks 5 to 3, and that kind of backs that up as well. Ulster benefiting from that. Breakdown then, 68 to 81. 1 ruck lost each. Both teams at 97% ruck success, but I felt overall Ulster's work at the breakdown probably a little better, other than for the Latu try where it was Latu, where they just kind of switched off there. Turnovers 1 in rucks and maul 4 to 2, and then mauls Ulster 7 from 7 for 100%, and La Rochelle 4 from 5 for 80%, but it was, for me, Ulster's maul was certainly the better weapon. We saw them marching them all up in that second half where they were almost jogging with it, and then obviously they got some scores off the back of their maul as well. On to discipline then, 8 penalties conceded to 10. So, Ulster keeping in single figures, certainly they would like that number to be a little bit lower though. Yellow cards, just the 1 for Ulster for that per clean out, and no cards for La Rochelle. Okay, so we start with La Rochelle. As I said, they did send a weakened side over, and with not much chance of winning the game, and that start from Ulster basically just left them far too much to do. The try before the break, you kind of think back to La Rochelle in Champions Cup against Leinster, the way they did that when Leinster had a brilliant start, but the side that were out there, I don't think can really be compared to the La Rochelle side that won back-to-back Champions Cup. Even the first team now isn't up to that level. And we saw that in the Champions Cup where they were obviously didn't qualify and they ended up in this competition after the pool stages. But this side is sent over as well. Certainly some young players that I think maybe we look back on in the future, making European debuts, that players who maybe have a big future with the club, but that remains to be seen really in the coming years. But not really a brilliant performance from them, but nobody really expected too much either. They did manage to get themselves 3 tries in the game. They did cause some issues for Ulster at times, but it was kind of few and far between. As I said, the scrum in the second half, and when they brought on a lot of big units as well, that certainly did cause issues for Ulster in terms of just sheer bulk and size, getting those guys down and having to commit numbers to do that as well, and still conceding meters. So, I think honestly the performance and the result for La Rochelle, given the squad that they sent over, I think was pretty much as expected. On to Ulster then. As I said, got themselves a nice fast start and look to be cruising towards half time. They'll be not necessarily worried about, but certainly there has to be some concerns about the fact that they conceded a try just before half time and then a try just at the end, and it doesn't matter whether they had a big cushion or not. It's just that it's that whole mental thing of being able to keep them out in one of those 2 scenarios, where your line is under siege, and when Ulster now obviously going on to semi-final, there are going to be big moments in the semi-final, and if they win that, in the final as well, where better defense at that exact same time could be the difference between winning and losing. So that's certainly something that Ulster, I think, need to work on. But I thought overall, good performance. It's good to see as well, we're seeing players coming back from injury now. That Jude Postlethwaite came on for Hume. And just the fact that Ulster have more options there, and the players that are there as well, really in form too. So that's nice to see. I thought both the wingers, Zach Ward and Werner Koch, looked really good, and Stockdale at full back as well. Coming up into the line, chasing his own kicks. Very good in the air as well. So, and again, in difficult conditions, and not afraid to kind of be aggressive and go for the ball. That was good to see. Doak was fantastic at 9. And, then the pack, you saw, I thought the back row were very good. Gus's, Timney in there. You even have like Henderson in the second row. He's, obviously towards the twilight of his career with Ulster, shall we say, but still, putting the shifts in and doing that kind of unglamorous work of hitting rucks and stuff. That Izuchuku was good as well, and overall I thought like Tom Stewart as well in the front row. He's a guy that has been kind of he's kind of been in and around close to Ireland squads and stuff like that. And yeah, it kind of feels like he just needs a decent run, maybe to really put himself, out there and say to um, the likes of Farrell, to say, I'm an option if you need. Now, Ireland luckily are blessed with a lot of really good hookers, but he's a guy with an eye for a try as well, which isn't bad. But obviously, so is Dan Sheehan. But yeah, I thought overall it's a decent performance. Stuart McCluskey maybe not as prominent as you've seen before, but he didn't really have to be. It wasn't a game where big players had to stand up necessarily. Also, just had to go through their processes, and doing that, I thought their attack was sharp. And yeah, like in the forwards, I said a lot of good work there. Maul looked decent as well. Line out, hard to judge because of the windy conditions. The starting scrum definitely good, but got to see that impact off the bench as well to kind of keep that up. Again, could be a turning point maybe in a semi-final for them. But overall, a fairly comfortable win. They're into a semi-final now, and not too far away from a big showpiece, which would be great reward, I think, for this Ulster team who you go back a couple of seasons and they were completely looking in absolute disarray, not just as a team but as as a province, as an organization as well. They brought in Murphy. It took time to bed things in, but he's turned it around. He's got them playing some really good rugby, and but at the same time, yes, they're in a semi-final, but it gets harder from here. And I think again they upped their performance this week compared to Ospreys last week, but they're going to have to go up, I think, another level at least for a semi-final win.